listening to the Starting Block Podcast. Guys, this is a show for complete athletic development. The goal, the objective here is to give you the tools to win, whether you're the athlete, the parent, or the coach. As always, I'm here with my co-host, Chris. What's up, Chris? How are you today?
Good afternoon.
Guys, if you are new to the show, we are unique. We are different than your standard podcast, and I'll break all that down for you. We essentially have multiple shows within the show. So the first episode you're going to get from us is going to be a bi-weekly Q&A. That's where we take the questions you guys submit to us at
info@startingblockpodcast.com.
Guys, that can be anything related to, the performance, the rehab, the nutrition, the voodoo neuro stuff, activation stuff that we all do. Anything about guests that we've had on, keep sending them in. We've got, I got a list of questions, and we'll just keep breaking them down. So appreciate all the feedback, guys. That's the first bi-weekly episode. Second one, you're going to get a bi-weekly guest interview. That is just like every other podcast on the planet. That's where we're going to bring in our friends, our colleagues from across the globe at this point, and they'll share their stories of success, what they do with their clients, their athletes, their patients, in their gyms and their practices. And as I say, every episode, ultimately, it's an opportunity for you to network with people that we believe share the same core value and mission that we do. The third episode you'll get is going to be that Friday Fire, that quarterly episode. That's just some real talk, me just sharing 20, 30 minutes of something that's on my mind I feel like is relevant to the industry and we need to get into that could help you guys as coaches. And then our last episode, which is fairly new, we've dropped a couple, but we're going to have like a quarterly athlete highlight. So you guys have seen some of the guys we've brought on, Xavier Rivas out of Ole Miss, Brent Rooker with the A's. You'll get to, I don't know when this episode will drop, but you'll get to meet Ava Gooden out at Northwest Soccer. And it's kind of cool, the athlete spotlight, because this gives you guys an opportunity to hear from athletes that have gone through the system that Chris and I, utilize. So that's pretty much the episode breakdown, guys. We don't run ads on the show. All we do is we just ask that if you support this mission, share the show, support this message, bring us a friend. That's all I ask. That's a small fee for the time and energy and financial obligation it takes for this show to get off the ground. So, share the show and pay your dues. Aside from that, guys, I think that's pretty much all the housekeeping. So, yeah, let's get into it. We got a pretty cool episode today. I'm really looking forward to diving into it with these guys. We're joined today by Josh Richardson and Luke Schultheiss from Velocity Athletic Development. So, what's up, guys?
Welcome.
What's up?
Hey, thanks for having us, John, Chris. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we were talking off the show, I hadn't heard of you guys until Chris brought it up, and then I dug through y'all's stuff on social media, and I really like what y'all are doing. Tell us just a little bit about the business, and then maybe we'll just get into your background a little bit and how it all started.
Yeah, for sure. So as our business model is right now, we are a performance gym. We've been known in the past to be more specific to O-line technical and developmental training, but over the years we've grown into much more, where we provide what I like to call the 360-degree experience for our athletes. We now span way more than just offensive line. We're working with multiple positions on the football field, but also we're working with other sports, whether it be baseball, softball, which is huge here in the Southeast, but we're also working with basketball and volleyball athletes through our performance model that we've developed, and we're having a lot of success with that. And getting back to that 360-degree experience, it was really important for me when I opened up Velocity that we provide an experience for our athletes that's a one-stop shop. So what I mean by that is not only are we developing the athletes from a performance model and from a position-specific model, we're also helping with their nutrition through our partnership with Northside Hospital here in Georgia. Lauren Cicinelli is our board-certified dietitian. We have a meal prep chef, Chris Peak, who's done an amazing job for us in our NFL Combine training. We have a partnership with Outlast Rehabilitation, who works here out of my facility. Dr. Brad is our doctor of physical therapy, so anything from cupping, scraping, all those great modalities, he provides that. And then we also have a recovery model. So our partnership with Normatec and being able to provide those types of tools. We have cold tub and sauna. So we, again, try to wrap everything in a nice little bow right here under our roof at Velocity to service not just offensive linemen, but all athletes.
Nice. I love it, man. I love it. That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's awesome. So how did you guys get going? Like, what's y'all's story? I mean, kind of share that with our audience.
So real quick, and I won't go through the long, drawn-out story, but obviously
We ain't got nothing but time, man.
I was fortunate enough to play football all the way through college. I played my college football at University of Louisville. Unfortunately, wasn't able to move on to the next level, as you guys know how difficult that can be. So I started in my career in sales. Over that time, me and my wife, we had our family. My son grew up to the point where he was interested in playing the game and started being able to participate in tackle football. From there, I obviously wanted to step in and help in that development and coach him along his way through youth football, and really reignited that passion and love for the game. And my ability and my love to be able to help these athletes continue to grow and develop grew into where we are today. So, for working with kids in the basement at my house to going into the park and having 20, 30 kids showing up on the weekend.
Isn't that how it always starts
It
for all of
does.
us? Like,
No,
start working
no,
out of the
no.
basement or something, yeah.
And John, that basement gets tight and very small very quickly,
Facts.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with
But man, it
offensive
leads to
linemen.
such a great culture, though.
It does.
Like any successful business, I feel like starts like that.
Absolutely. Ground-based right there in our garage, in our basements. So, we were fortunate enough to find a location in a facility where we were able to work out of right here on our campus here at Velocity in Canton, Georgia. And it was only 2,700 square feet. It wasn't a very large space, but from there we were able to add turf, and we found a former CrossFit gym that actually shut down, and we procured a lot of their equipment and utilized that for our strength facility. We had a rig in the gym at the time, and it was a very small space, but we were able to build something pretty cool out of that. And, where it really took off, John and Chris, is when COVID happened. Let's be honest, because a lot of these NFL guys, collegiate kids, even high school kids didn't have a place to work out. A lot of them had to go back home, right? They couldn't be on their campuses or in their organizations. And as they came back, fortunately being here in Atlanta, Georgia, where we have a lot of athletes where they live, we were able to continue to service their training. We were a very unique gym, being a niche boutique gym. We were able to stay open. We did a very good job of maintaining the proper protocol and keeping our athletes safe. But I think we got the word out. A lot of the athletes started to see us as an option for them to continue to train and develop, and they love the product. And you know how small this world is. Their friends start to see them on social media and say, hey, where you at? I want to continue to work with you guys. And from there, it grew into, the agents starting to ask, hey, can you do more? Right? Outside of just the technical training we were doing was position work with the O-linemen. We're like, sure, absolutely. That's where Luke came in for me. At the time, Luke was playing for Tennessee Chattanooga. And Luke, obviously did an amazing job in helping out here at the gym at the same time. And, he was charged with developing our performance model. And he's really grown it over the last 6-7 years into something special. And now we're able to provide our NFL Combine training, our pro day, our pre-draft, if you will, training for our athletes. And really proud of what that's grown into for us today.
Nice. Yeah, Luke, kind of share a little bit more. You went to UT Chat. Did you play ball out there?
Yeah. I started my collegiate career at the University of Louisville, same university as Josh. Was playing actually guard at the time, and was there for about 3.5 years. Just really didn't like the situation there at that time, and I ended up transferring to Tennessee Chattanooga for my last 1.5 years, playing primarily guard and tackle there. And that's actually where I met Josh is through that transition from Louisville to Chattanooga. Started training here in 2017, 2018. And then slowly worked my way into a coaching role, just really helping out on the weekends more than anything, because that's really all that we were doing. We were just doing one class on Saturdays for 1 hour, and that was it. Everything else was just kind of for fun. And then I got done playing, and Josh approached me and was like, hey, you're done playing. I'm ready to be done with this corporate thing. Let's start this thing full time. So started going in 2018, and then we've been going ever since.
Nice.
So
nice.
both of you have an offensive lineman experience yourselves.
Right.
But you also now have experience in the performance and developing that aspect as well. So how did you begin to incorporate these things? So did you start out almost exclusively like lineman drills and lineman development? And then we're like, oh, wait a minute. Some of these kids just need to get faster in order to do their techniques better. I mean, how did that whole thing evolve?
I think, and I'll jump in real quick, but I think you're exactly right. We started with the position work, right? But we also played at a high level. We were fortunate enough to play in organizations and programs that have that 360-degree experience that I talked about, and understanding how important performance is to what we do as offensive linemen was critical for us for growth purposes, right? So, we didn't want to get to the point where we were capped in that we were only focused on technical training. We wanted to be able to provide that whole holistic process for that athlete and making sure they develop, right? So again, that's where we challenged Luke to really take the bull by the horns and really grow and develop that side of our business for us.
So let's dig into that a little bit. Like, I guess Luke, since you're kind of the head of performance here, what was, was that the direction you always wanted to go? Like, how'd you get into that? And then I'm curious, I want to get into what it is you guys do, but ultimately, kind of what your philosophy is and how you attack programming for athletes.
Yeah. So, kind of the direction we wanted to go when we started is we had no idea what the direction was.
Hell yeah, that's how it starts.
It was 100%. Hey, we're gonna start performance, and then we kind of looked at each other and it's like, all right, I guess we're doing performance.
That's how it goes.
Yeah, we have a great background in offensive line. We did not have a background in performance at all. I was doing computer engineering as my degree, so completely separate from performance.
That's really funny because that's actually my wife's original education as well, and now she basically helps head up the athletic side of stuff here too.
Completely different. So on that engineering side, very, very different. And
but it makes you a good coach because you think about things a little bit differently. Sorry to interrupt, but I just thought that was a good point.
Yeah, no, and that's actually been used a ton and what we do now. When we first started, it was extremely basic. It was just trying to get kids under a bar, and it's like, okay, what can we learn? Where can we go? Tons of stuff online, reading every single thing I could, listening to great podcasts like y'all's, trying to learn as much as I possibly could, and really just trying to add one thing every year. We had started with just one-on-one stuff, and then offering some classes during the summer. At that point, I think we had like 3 kids for the entire summer signed up. It was not very good for us, but it gave us a chance to test a lot of stuff, which is extremely important. So there was completely, room for error, which is great. You could kind of mess it all up and it was going to be okay. So slowly but surely started adding more and more and more on the performance side. We actually went backwards with how most people do their performance. So like Josh was saying, we had agents reach out to us. We had some of our collegiate athletes reach out to us, and they're like, hey, I need to go get ready to play football. I need to go get ready for the NFL or the CFL or whatever that professional opportunity is. So we started with that level first.
So it sounds like you guys basically, you started with that level first. Like, you just went like head first right into the fire, like, learning on the fly right here, it sounds like.
100%. We have kind of really learned on the fly, and talking to a lot of really smart people and reading a lot and kind of learning as much as we possibly could. Start with those couple middle school kids and then slowly building to more, and then it went almost basically right into collegiate and professional athletes.
Guys, for the other coaches, young coaches, that's not the norm. Everybody wants to work with the pros. Usually takes a while to get there.
But
you guys are the exception.
But what's so interesting, though, is that, one thing that you hear anybody who's had any long-term success in this business, and John, you and I have done this a long time, and almost everyone who's done it for, say, 10 years plus, all say, I've made more mistakes, and basically you adapt and you move on and you continue on, and that's common. Everybody's like, nah, screwed that up. Let's pivot and move on. Yeah. And it sounds to me like you guys did that, and did it successfully. So
and that's a great point, Chris. Like, I feel like that's something that people need to be more open about. I think in our industry, there's like this vibe of perfection and ego, and it's like this pissing contest. Like, it's really annoying, which I hate, but it's like, this is such a great, way to attack it. It's like, oh man, like I have messed up so many people over the years, and I have made mistakes. It's like that's how you learn and get better,
Yep.
So I just love the fact that like you're transparent about that is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's funny. You look back on our programs and everything from 2018, and they're like poorly written, terribly programmed Excel documents, and it's like, God, these are terrible. They're like, I would not
use
do
Excel,
this.
So
Yeah, it's funny looking back on that stuff now, and it's like, man, I wouldn't do that ever again. And even looking back on 2 years ago, it's looking at some of our stuff. It's like, man, like, why were we doing that? And then, I think that's the mark of at least growing is you can look back on your old stuff. It's like, man, that's terrible, but you still have some of those elements in there. It's like, oh, I can see that we still have this in there, that in there, but it's, kind of morphed in and flexed into a lot more.
Yeah.
Let me interject real quick because I think this is important,
Please.
right? Kind of help fill the gaps, right? So when I started the business, I was in corporate America, and I was kind of doing this more on the side, right? And then Luke came on board, and he was tasked with trying to manage the gym when I wasn't there. And Luke was a 305-pound offensive guard that played for Tennessee Chattanooga. If you see him on our social media now, he may be 205 pounds.
I was going to say, when you said you were a guard, I was going to interject and be like, bro, you don't look like a guard, no offense.
Right. No, I don't know how he figured it out because obviously I'm still 350 pounds. But the reality is during that time, and it wasn't a necessary need to have growth within this business, Luke had plenty of time to start doing these things on his own, right? So yes, we did work with some young kids, and yes, we did jump right into working with some elite athletes, but a lot of the testing, the modeling, all the mistakes that were made on Luke. Let's be honest, Luke did it to himself, right? So
Yeah, we've all been there. Yeah.
So I would come into the gym, coming off work or whatever, and he had his phone set up and cameras, and he's videotaping him doing the drills and the exercises and all the things, and that, I think, he spent all those hours, as you guys know, right? Listening to or reading books like, Outlier, right? 10,000 hours to become an expert. Those hours that he had, as we didn't have athletes coming in on a consistent basis at that time, were spent on him developing his skill set. And it really helped out in being able to elevate him and his game as we started working with more and more athletes.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like I tested myself and I used myself. And Chris, we've talked about that on the show. Like the amount of times I've just completely blown myself up just doing some stupid shit. Like,
Oh, yeah.
But hey, it's better on me than one of the athletes. But
How many times have we actually started like a Q&A and John's got the newbie on his back or on his arm
I'm
or
usually
something
sitting
like
here
that?
on the newbie, or like doing something while we're on it. Yeah. So, all right. So you start to figure things out. You
Yep.
start to develop your philosophy. Tell me how, from both of y'all's standpoints, how did your training philosophy, what did it grow into? And what is your philosophy? So when a parent comes in, because you do all sports now,
Yeah.
how do you, I don't want to say sell that, but how do you communicate that to them?
Well, at least from a holistic point, my message is clear. It's a 360-degree experience, right? I allow my coaches, like Coach Luke, to be more granular and specific to the philosophy within their space, right? I allow my doctor of physical therapy to be able to speak his message, but ultimately we've provided a space that provides all those options for them to be able to get better and continuing to improve. So, as far as my part within the football realm is that we're trying to develop the athlete from the ground up, right? We're starting them from ground zero, and we're focusing on developing them all the way through that process. Whether you're newly on your journey of this game of football or you've been playing for 15, 20 years, we're going to start right from the beginning, and we're going to build you up from there. From a performance standpoint, I'd let Luke be able to interject a little bit more about his philosophy on the performance side.
Yeah,
Sure.
like what are some of kind of the main systems you utilize in theories?
Yeah, so I'll kind of spread the gamut, and then I'll get a little bit more granular. So really it depends on what kind of person that we have coming in. We run so many different types of programs that we really have kind of a mini LTAD system, so a long-term athlete development system. We start people as young as 6th grade. So the 6th grade and 7th grade and 8th grade is going to look a little bit different than the high school kid coming in. That'll look a little bit different than our college prep class, which is really cool, and we can get into that. That'll look a lot different than our collegiate athletes and then our NFL combine. So I'll kind of start with the sixth grade. The biggest thing for us is getting kids to move in a ton of different directions, a ton of different ways, and learn how to be an athlete and put them in situations to be an athlete. There's so much now where kids are, playing video games or sitting around and not going outside. And it's like, hey, let's go find this big stick and smack it on the largest tree we possibly can. So our training model is really about that. It's trying to get kids in great situations, play competitive games, also, the strength training part as well. But a lot of multiplanar stuff. We try to get them to move like animals. So it's like, hey, let's walk like a duck, or let's crawl like a gorilla, or something to get them on the ground and get them moving. And then once we get into our speed development, that can look like a ton of different things. And speed doesn't always have to be just linear. It could be curvilinear. It could be any type of figure eights. It could be a ton of different planes, but it also can be games. So we can put them in like capture the flag. We can put them in tag. A great one is a knee touch game as well, where you're trying to touch your opponent's knee. And so you're learning really like multiplanar speed at that point. And then we also include linear speed as well as like normal, stuff when it comes to strength and conditioning, teaching them how to lift, teaching them how to move. But being good in tons of different planes is really important. When it comes to our high school athletes, we're trying to backfill what they're getting from high school most of the time. When it comes to football, because that is our primary and biggest clientele. But when it comes to a baseball kid, we're trying to get them, one, rotating well, and two, moving well. If that athlete is not moving well, then they can't throw harder. A great example of this is actually a softball athlete that we worked with. It's a really cool story, and it's something that's completely underutilized within that baseball and really overhead athlete space is sprinting. When you sprint pitchers, their nervous system gets a lot more effective. So one of the biggest things for her was getting her sprinting faster and getting her just generally stronger in not just unilateral movements, but bilateral movements as well. So we sprinted her, we got her a lot faster, and we move her in a ton of different planes. So we don't just sprint her linearly. We move her in, all the curvilinear stuff. We do all the figure eight stuff, as well as a ton of multiplanar jumps. So not just like regular broad jumps. We'll do any type of like vector broad jump and get them moving. And that has helped her a lot. So she's up to like 65, 66 on her fastball and coming in about 59. So that's a huge jump. But it's so underutilized when it comes to pitchers specifically and overhead athletes.
That's impressive, man. I mean, that's speaking from dad right here. His daughter plays college softball. Like that's impressive, bro. Like it's good stuff.
Thank you. It's cool. Like the softball space is cool. The baseball space is cool. And then you start looking at basketball athletes and kind of what they have to work through as well. A lot of them have never strength trained as well before. They're just doing on court work. So when you start strength training them, they get a little bit better with that as well.
I'm going to interject. We can just interrupt you. It's like, sorry, this isn't a conversation. I just interrupt all the time. My fault. That's why we shouldn't call this an interview. But I love that, and that's, guys, that is good stuff. Like, guys, that is really good stuff. You need to go back and listen to that 3-4 minute clip right there. Like, that is a phenomenal approach to beginning an athlete. Like, we've talked about it on the show multiple times. Like, I'm on record saying I feel like there's a de-evolutionary state in of humans these days because kids don't go out and do what they used to do, and so a lot of these coaches are out here focusing on speed work and agility ladders and all that, where it's like you just need to freaking move, man. Like these kids just got to move and go from there. And games stuff's a great way to go about it. So I love that, man. I just wanted to hit that home and say how much I value that type of approach. That's awesome.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off that, like when you're talking about just speed, pretty much all of our sessions are set up with some type of dynamic activation, inflection, so getting on the ground, moving around. That can be a ton of different things, but we're really just trying to get moving at that point. And then we get into our actual speed work, so getting into speed, whatever that is for the day. That could be linear, that could be curvilinear, that could be a change of direction day, that could be anything, but some type of moving in space. Then we're going to get into power, but like you were saying, just doing basic power stuff is not necessarily going to help. So just like a regular box jump, that's one, it's great, but you can do a ton of different things in power. So we throw a ton of med balls, we throw a ton of sandbags in a ton of different planes. So you see a lot of people just, throwing med balls at a wall or whatever. Some of our favorite stuff to do is, let's say you're doing a reverse granny, so taking a big sandbag and throwing it behind you. You can laterally jump and then throw it. You could jump at a 45 and then throw it. You could throw it to yourself and then throw it. You could have a partner throw it to you and then throw it. And those are all different variations that we can use in power that kind of gamify it a little bit. Another way, kind of gamifying power, we could have 3 athletes and we all have, let's say, 6-pound sandbags. And it's like, all right, who throws this thing the farthest? Just like old school, like you and your buddies would be, before so much technology. You just like, hey, let's take this giant thing and throw it as hard as we possibly can. And that's fun. Or jump mats and trying to just compete. Like, not necessarily making it about, hey, who's jumping the highest? It's like, hey, are you jumping better than you did last time? Who's jumping best in the group? Are you jumping better than your buddy? It's not, you don't have to compete with the best kid in the class, but you could just compete with your friend, and that's going to get a lot out of you. We use a ton of timing gates as well to kind of up that element of competition. We don't just time 10s and 20s and fly 10s and everything. We can time curvilinear stuff. We can time S-pattern runs. We can time a ton of different things that just amps that competition level up. Even in our high school classes, we try to use a ton of timing and the jump mats and everything else just to up that level of competition, and it's fun. I can't tell you how many times we've had the jump mat out, and Josh could be working with somebody, and one of our other O-line technicians could be working with somebody, and they're like, man, I want to see how high I can jump. It's the next thing that now they're into it, and they're trying to just see how high they can jump. Or we're doing vertical granny tosses and our indoor, and the ceiling's probably about 30 feet. So you really got to get this thing up to throw it, and a competition always starts to see who can hit the ceiling first or who can hit it the hardest. Right. And that really amps things up. Like, it's and we'll let it go. Like, sometimes it might be just 5 reps is what's scheduled for that day, and then one kid starts throwing, then the other kid starts throwing, and next thing you know, we're at 15, we're at 20. But their output's still there. We're still producing great outputs. So that gamifying everything, even in power, even in speed, is huge. We use a ton of bar speed as well in the weight room. So we kind of gamify the weight room with that. We force velocity profile pretty much everybody in our college prep and our NFL combine. But in our high school classes, or we just have a private client who we might be just starting with, we'll put them on the bar speed. It's like, hey, your goal is to hit this number. And now you got to get to that number, regardless of the day, or you're just trying to make that competition. But we can also use that as an audio regulatory method when it talks about some of our higher athletes, or if a kid's really trashed, we can use that as well in the high school classes. But we can use that to gamify things as well.
Luke, did you go back and listen to some of our old podcasts or what? We were just talking. I was just about to say, you basically are auto-regulating, or basically letting the kids auto-regulate, and yet the competition of, regardless of what it is, whether it be throwing the med ball or hitting the ceiling, or who can vertical jump the highest or whatever, you're doing something, or they are doing something on their own, where they are competing. They are truly going to give their all. Mm-hmm. Okay, almost regardless of what it is. So it's like every rep I do of this, it's going to be everything I got, because I want to beat my buddy next to me, And I think mm-hmm. that's, and I think a lot of times with training, let's face it, somebody could come in and they're going through the motions, right? They're not really competing. They're not really giving everything their all. That's one aspect about, what you just mentioned, is that every single one of those reps, they're going to actually be giving their best, even if it wasn't exactly what you planned on doing that day, Yeah.
And Josh, like you can relate to this as well. Like, as a business owner, that camaraderie that is developed, with that competition is something guys like you and me, like we need. Like, it does so much for the business and the facility. And and I was talking to somebody about this the other day. Like Chris Paul, just there's an interview with him talking to some high school kids, And what he was talking about, the point guards, he's like, guys, it's so quiet. He's like, you point guards are so quiet, and like you're afraid to talk, and that it's something with this younger generation. And it goes into this point here. Like, I know I experienced that with a lot of our younger kids. They just won't speak, and that makes it extremely difficult to develop that camaraderie.
Absolutely. I call it culture, right? And that's essentially what we're developing here is the culture that you come in here and compete. And that's what kids thrive on, right? The athletes that we work
need
with
competition in this life. Yeah.
It's healthy. It absolutely is. But it's almost like a drug, man. These kids want to come back because they want to continue to compete. They want to continue to get better. And it's not just you pushing weight. It's now, how fast can I move it? Did I do it better than my friend, right? And there's a lot of smack talking that's going on while it's happening, and it's just a fun environment. To what Luke said, we gamify things so that these athletes enjoy it. It doesn't feel like it's a workout, right? It's more of a competition. It's like them being back out on the football field or on the basketball court or in the diamond or whatever it may be. We are absolutely recreating that experience in our gym with these athletes because that's what they love to do. They love to compete.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. That is great stuff. So now let's Luke, let's transition back to the training a little bit. So we talked about the younger athletes. We've touched on the high school crew. Walk me through, because down here in the South, football is it's a religion for the most part, right? So how are you adapting your programs with these schools around that have these full-time strength and conditioning coaches? Like, we know, offensive linemen, guys need to squat, things like that, but they've already squatted at school. How are you adapting your programs to match these kids' needs?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, especially for, our high school kids, like you're saying, is multiplanar movements are extremely, lacking, as well as a lot of just moving around and mobility work, as well as power. So you might see some speed stuff. It really depends on the school and who their strength coach is and how much time they've got. You're definitely going to see strength. So that is a low point for us when it comes to high school football players that already are doing stuff at school. But we really try to hammer down power. That is the biggest thing. So touch on it real
quick. So for the younger athlete listening, or the mom or dad trying to figure that out, what does power mean? Because I think we all can attest, when parents come in or kick it, that they all say, I want to get stronger, but they're not. What they're truly meaning is they want to get more powerful. But so explain to them the difference of what power is.
Yeah. So strength is strength. Power is the application of strength. And that's how we look at power. So a great example of that would be, some kid might be stronger than another, but can he take this med ball and can he throw it farther than the other kid? And the other kid might be stronger, but that kid, one, might be just more, twitched on, and he is super twitchy and he can just grab this med ball and chuck it, or he can move better, or he can jump better. Strength is not necessarily directly related to speed or to jumping ability. And when you talk about power, kind of jumping is the easiest thing to talk about because it's the most well known when it comes to power. But upper body power is a big thing as well. I think that's extremely underutilized right now in all levels of strength and conditioning. You can throw a whole lot of things hard. You can row a lot of things hard. You can rotate really fast. And having great upper body power is extremely important for sports as well. And then the lower body side. And that doesn't just include linear power. Like I said, that includes like multi-directional and multi-planar power. And then trying to get in a ton of that mobility stuff. That is super lacking in the high school. So trying to get them moving around on the ground, trying to get them healthier, and really kind of working with Brad. It's crazy to see how much of PT is just mobility. It's like, well, you don't move well enough, so that's going to really bother you. We see a lot of kids, they have like tight pecs, and they're always complaining about something in their shoulder. I'm like, we give them some scap work, and next thing you know, their pecs feel way better. And I'm like, well, your pecs weren't the problem, your scaps aren't moving. So we get you, some scapular movement, and next thing you know, they feel great. So we try to work that into the high school classes, and we really spend a majority of the time on that. Strength is pretty much just, a lot more pulling, a lot more unilateral stuff, and then trying to get into some core, and not necessarily just like planks. It could be farmer's carries. It could be, taking a band and you're pulling it from the rack as high as you can and pulling it across your body. So multiplanar core as well, like you would see in sports. And then, trying to hammer down any type of weakness that they might have that they're not getting at that school. So we talk to each kid. Like, for example, let's say that we have a high school class, and I'll ask them at the beginning, hey, who sprinted today at school? And, hands go up. It's like, okay, you guys are going to be over here. And they might be doing, farmers carry marches to really just ingrain sprint patterns. And the other group might be sprinting. And then we'll work into mobility, and it could just be some sprint patterning as well. So we'll split each high school group as well to kind of individualize it based on what they've done, and kind of depending on what they need that day as well.
Yeah, and I could add to that real quick. I mean,
Sure.
As these parents come in, John, Chris, I think you guys probably get this too. We hear it all the time, especially from our lineman parents. He's got to be stronger. He's not the strongest. He's got to bench the heaviest and all these different things. And at least my message to them is that's great, right? They're going to get that in their high school strength class and their coaches and everything. But there's the difference between absolute strength and functional strength, and being able to help these athletes develop like athletes that play within their space, right? So if it was all about absolute strength, we'd see a lot more power lifters playing football at the end of the day, right? That's
Right.
the facts, right? Those guys are not going to be able to move much better than an athlete that focuses on their position and their athleticism. So we want them to understand our goal is, yes, to make them stronger, but we want them to be able to move that strength fast, right? And that's where velocity comes in with the title in our company's name, right? The days of when I grew up playing football, being the strongest guy on the field and taking up the most space is just not how this game's played anymore. You look at some of these genetic freaks that are in the NFL, and that's what they are. They're aliens, man. They're 6'7", 315 with a six-pack of abs, and that's just reality of it. So how are you going to compete against that? It's no longer the 350-pound fat guy that can bench 500 pounds. It's got to be a guy that can move, that can stabilize and take on force and deliver force, and do it through multiple different planes and angles to be able to not put themselves in a position to get hurt. And the more you start sharing that type of conversation with these parents, they start to get it. The light bulb comes on. They build trust. Well, we build trust. They trust in us. And that's where that's the most important thing for us, is that trust is there, that they can ask any question, understand that we're going to be able to help them understand the why. And that's where that long-term loyalty comes in with our customer base.
Well, Josh, to that point, there's a leaderboard of powerlifting over here to my left.
Yeah.
And there's more 400, 500, and 600-pound bench pressers on this board than you can imagine. I mean, there's probably there's 15 people, 400 pounds plus. What's the interesting thing is that I tell the pitchers, the baseball pitchers I train, guess what? None of these guys can do. I don't care what the number is beside their name on bench press. None of them can throw the ball 80 miles an hour, not without getting hurt. Yeah. They might be able, maybe they can, but they're going to do it once, and that's one of the things that we have to bring up to them time after time after time. Kids who walk in and they're so impressed with numbers, it's like, don't be quite as impressed as you think. They have to be able to develop the things like you just said. Otherwise, the weight room strength by itself is almost useless.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think people are becoming smarter. There's a lot more information out there. There's a lot of misinformation out there, right? So, it's our duty, and as far as gym owners and what we do in this world, is to help educate and share what we know and what we believe in our philosophy. John, like you said, learning a little bit more about what we believe in, and helping the parents understand the why through this process, and then ultimately helping the athlete themselves understand the why. Because the more they understand this why, the more bought in they are. The more they're confident in what's happening, and the more that they feel comfortable in being able to work with us long term.
That's great stuff. Absolutely, I agree with you on all points there. I want to dig into more of your higher level athletes, collegiate, combine prep type stuff. We actually had a conversation as we said off air, one of the episodes that we recorded that we could not publish because we had technical issues was it was Tony Holler, but we were talking about combine prep, things like that. So let's dig into it a little bit. When you have complete control, because as coaches, we all have to adapt to what these high schools are doing as well, and it's not always bad, but there's just a lot of give and take. But when you have the opportunity to really control an athlete's program from top to bottom at an elite, at a higher level, how are you approaching that? Like, are you going conjugate type of style? Are you doing max and dynamic effort work? Like, break that down a little bit for us.
Yeah. So I think that the one big thing with combine training that people really don't understand is, one, you got to get these guys healthy first. They all just came off playing.
A lot of the time takes that full 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just came off a big season. That's why it's so important that we have that 360-degree approach. Like Josh said, it takes a freaking village to get these guys healthy. So that's step one for us, is health and getting guys ready to train. So as soon as we get them in and we eval them. We have a ton of cool tech. So we have force plates. We do a full force plate eval as soon as guys walk in the door. They do a full medical eval with Brad. They do a full nutritional eval with Warren. And then they do a full movement assessment with us. So that doesn't just include the performance side. That also includes the O-line technical side.
And what is your movement assessment based in?
So our movement assessment is really based through Brad and all of his things that we like to see. I have a couple things that I like to see just to get to a good range of motion to sprint. So looking at internal and external rotation of the hip, just some basic table work stuff, and then some Thomas tests as well to make sure that they can actually get into a good position to sprint. And then anything else that they've had injury-wise. So movement assessment is kind of based on them individually, as well as a lot of ankle mobility. O-linemen are terrible ankles. So we keep seeing it's pretty much ankles, knees, and hips, and then shoulders. That's the three big ones. Back is kind of dependent on the guy. But everybody who we've ever worked with has sustained some type of injury in their 5 years, or they have just came off an injury through the season that they were, one, trying to hide, or two, trying to play through. So they might have had turf toe in week 5, and now it is 8 weeks, 10 weeks past that, and they still have turf toe. So they could be still working through that. So get guys healthy is step one. As soon as we get guys healthy, we are absolutely hammering stuff down. So it's really kind of a mix of like the conjugate max effort stuff, like you were saying. We try to use strength residuals as best as we possibly can, as well as speed residuals. So, talking about Tony Holler and the whole Feed the Cat system is trying to, really microdose speed. But with O-lineman, speed looks completely different. We luckily found this out, and then it was backed up by some research that was done by Cam Joss. We actually started using a ton of weighted sleds for O-linemen, and then we just keep the weight the exact same, and then try to increase speed. So we speed profile all of our guys when they get here. That's not kind of a little bit different than just doing the force velocity profile with the VBTs. So we speed profile them, and then we use a ton of the velocity decrement to try to know where they should be at. So if a guy comes in and, let's say on his baseline day, he runs like a 1.5, 10-yard split, and that's obviously super fast, but it makes it really easy for numbers here. And we want to slow him down by like 50%. Then we would, put that into our Excel document that would pump out all the numbers that we need to, and then I would have all the sheets with me. And so when we sprint guys, we sprint them through the lasers with the sleds. So I know exactly how fast that they are moving. That way we're not guessing on sled weight or guessing how fast they're actually running. So if I want, X weight on the sled to slow them down by a certain percentage, then that guy might need 3 or 4 plates. We keep going on that. Now he starts running faster with 3 or 4 plates. I know that he's increased his horizontal power and force capabilities. So now we can add more weight and slow him down again. And so we really live in that heavy sleds on for most of it. And then, trying to use the strength residuals in the weight room. It kind of transitions around from max strength to max effort, to not max effort but max power on those Thursdays for us. The French contrast stuff is extremely interesting when it comes to O-line, but you can do a ton of different cool things with French contrasting that you wouldn't necessarily think of. You can use eccentric bar velocity in your French contrast. So we don't just use concentric velocity, we use eccentric velocity as well. And that allows us to weight things to see how fast that we are decelling, because the ability to take that force from a eccentric phase to a concentric phase is extremely important for the vertical. It's extremely important to run fast. So we can profile guys on that as well, and that kind of ties into all of our force velocity profiling that we do in the weight room, and that really is the basis of everything. So the force velocity profiling, and then the force plate analysis, and then the speed profiling. But guys that are O linemen specifically, and that's really what our bread and butter is, they don't run top speed very effectively, and it's extremely dangerous to run guys top speed a ton when they're that big. We've had some really, really good success, and these guys are really, really big, and it's kind of scary when you start seeing 340-pound guys run fly 10s. It makes your heart stop for a second. So the biggest thing for us is hammering down that 10 and that 20, and then making them look really athletic and really smooth in the back half and really reactive. And that's really a big thing for most O-linemen, is they're not very reactive athletes. And we see that when we do our force plate testing. So looking at the force plate stuff, have you guys, have anybody talk about DSI before, or dynamic strength index?
Well,
not particularly.
John and I, first of all, let me just say, we had Dr. Mann on. It's, again, technical issue. We're going to have to redo that episode. And so we've had a discussion about it that you will never hear, that will never go out to the public. So we will have, once we are going to get Dr. Mann back on, but I just want to do that segue, and please continue.
Yeah. So DSI, as dynamic strength index, essentially uses max power, and then from a counter movement jump, and then the isometric mid thigh pull. And you can kind of tell if guys are needing a little bit more reactive, or if they're needing a little bit more strength. And basically every O lineman ever needs a lot more reactive stuff. We also see that with our force velocity profiling and that speed profiling, like I was saying, and then using a lot of the velocity decrement stuff, and then trying to microdose speed with O linemen. If you start sprinting a ton of O linemen immediately and you do a ton of volume with them, they're going to implode about week 6. And you got to keep these guys healthy for 12 weeks. So really trying to just feed them a little bit. If we have a guy hit a crazy top speed, we shut them down right away. They might only run one sprint that day. So if they come in, they hit one loaded sprint, and they hit 110, and we see anything more than a tenth off of their last run from the previous day, we'll immediately shut them down, because we know right then they've gotten faster. They're moving the needle on that day. So with O linemen especially, you can't really burn them down too much, and especially with their max strength stuff. Some of these guys are 400 plus pound benchers, and they will absolutely implode when you start doing 225 work, or if you start trying to do too much max strength work, because you got to do so much volume for 225, and you're trying to push that lactic threshold so high that the reps are just extreme. Another cool way to get around that I think that not a lot of people use is high rep back work. You can get a lot of volume with somebody's back without completely tearing them down. So you can use a ton of different things, from time to just reps or any type of drop sets to really kind of get the whole lactic acid threshold, and as well as the tricep stuff. You can really trash somebody's triceps without having too much residual effects going into the next week. So kind of using every modality in the book. There's not just one thing that we can do with the system. It's not just, hey, we're going to do max strength, or we're not just going to be fully conjugate. We have our high and our low days, but every day for these guys is pretty much high, just because of how heavy they are, and their impact into the ground is extreme. Even if we're doing 5-10-5 work, that's a lot of change of direction. That's a lot of pounding. You got to get them re-warmed up too, and that's a huge thing. And you think about just warm-up volume alone when it comes to pre-draft. that starts taking a toll on guys. If you warm guys up for 20 minutes each morning, you're looking at almost an hour of warm-ups just to get moving. So there's so many different things with pre-draft, and I think it's why we find it so interesting, and why most guys don't want to tackle the O-line, is because it does take so many different modalities. You got to pull from everything. You got to pull from Louis and the West Side stuff, and then you got to pull from guys like Tony Holler and all the Feed the Cat stuff. You really have to use every little thing to make it happen, and I think that's why we've had a lot of successes, because we don't root ourselves and we're just going to do this. We change the system around a little bit every year. This past year, we had the fastest O-line group in combine history that we can see. So we had a group average of 9 guys at 5:01. We had 2 guys run 4.88s.
Wow.
And
impressive.
so those are some crazy numbers for O-line. Right now we're averaging about half a second off everybody's 40 from their baseline. So it really does take a village, and it takes every system, every single thing that you can possibly do to get a guy to run a 4.88. Especially when we had one guy come in, he baselined pretty well. He was slightly over a 5, but taking an offensive lineman from even a low 5 to a 4.88 is a giant jump. And then the other kid that we had, he came in and baselined at a 5.3 and dropped into a 4.88.
Well, let me add to this real quick, because I want to make sure Luke gets credit for this. We share this with our athletes and our agents as we start recruiting them. We have 10 to 12 weeks to get the most out of the athlete that they can to prepare them for the biggest interviews of their life. We have to do it in a way that we create incremental gains without putting them at risk of injury, right? So, when you hear Luke say, he might get one run and then we shut it down, well, that's important, because we don't want to put them at risk of injury. Again, these are big, massive individuals that will tear themselves apart. So we've done a very good job of making sure that the athletes don't tear themselves apart by being able to manage this process all the way through for them. And then to the success story that Luke shared about a couple of our guys running 4.88s, these are guys that have came in that were really light offensive linemen, just over 280 pounds. By the time that they left here, they were both over 300 pounds running a 4.88. So adding extra weight and moving that much faster can't be done very easily. So you've got to manage that process so that they don't rip themselves apart. And again, knock on wood, we'll continue to keep this model and this thing going. Our percentage rate of success in keeping our athletes healthy through this process is extremely high. And I think that speaks to what Luke has been able to develop and understand. It's time to pull it back. It's time to pull him out to make sure that these athletes are safe and having the success come out of it instead of injury.
I love
So what?
that. Love
Just to put that in perspective, let's talk very, very briefly about what that does, what that improvement just did for that individual. How much more money did it put in their pocket when it comes to a draft status?
You want to share it, Luke?
Yeah.
I mean,
so
don't say names. I'm just saying, give us an idea.
yeah. So
And did any of them go to the Giants?
so I'll use an example. So I'll use an example of a guy we had got last season for us, not this past draft season, but 2 seasons ago. He came into us. He was about 600-ish in the draft. He was a really good athlete, former soccer player actually, and then turned into a 6'4", 323-pound guard, if you can believe that. So soccer player turned to a guard. Started at a Division II school, super under-recruited kid. Gets himself into NC State, is a really good, high-quality guard for them, and has got a lot more on the table that I think people were underutilizing at that point. They just didn't see it in the draft process. So we luckily got hooked up with him. We made some huge jumps for him. He had the 8th best guard pro day of all time when it comes to RAS score. So that's a relative athletic score. It really kind of uses a ton of different metrics to rank guys based on size and speed and power and everything else. So he actually ran a 5:01 at 323 and 6'4". Turned around, had a 30 plus bench as well, and had a really good 5.10.5 and a really good L. So, that's one guy. He ended up getting drafted 114th overall. So when you look at signing bonuses, you can look at a 4th-round draft pick. They're anywhere from a mil, down, which is huge. We had 2 guys this past draft class, those 2 4.88 guys. One of the guys, he started his career at Florida. I'll run through it really quick because it's a mouthful. He went from guard to defensive end to tight end, back to guard when he transferred to Chattanooga. So he went guard, defensive end, tight end.
Wow.
Was a special teams all-star there, but he knew that he could be a lot more. Transferred to Chattanooga. We had a really good connection with Chat from my playing days, and he came down to us. He turned around, ran that 4.88, and he is currently on the Chiefs. So he's only played 12 essential games playing offensive line at an FCS school. So there's one big jump. We have another guy, Lorenzo Thompson. He was up at Rhode Island this past season. Very under-recruited kid out of Syracuse, New York, which is ironic when we get to the final story here. So Syracuse, New York, under-recruited kid, goes to Rhode Island, is a really good player for them. But there was other teammates that he had that were, kind of a little more highly touted. He came to us through a relationship with the coach there. We worked with him. Absolutely great dude, worked his ass off. And next thing you know, he turns around and he gets invited to Syracuse's pro day, ironically, back at home. He turns around and runs that 4.88. And everybody's asking, does he have another year? And what position does he play? Because he can't play offensive tackle. And really went up there, stole the show, and he's currently on the Browns. So
nice.
Taking guys like that is what we've kind of made our bread and butter out of. We've had the high-round draft picks. We've worked with first-round draft picks before. So we're not, new to that space. But there's a ton of other guys that got to block dudes too. You got to stay on the roster blocking the same exact guys. We've worked with a guy who played 7 years in the league, and he's got countless clips of him locking up J.J. Watt at the Cardinals when he was out there. And he was a practice squad guy. But he still had to go block J.J. every day, and his ass was going to get cut if he didn't block him. So it didn't matter if he was a perennial All-Pro. He still needed to be just as prepared, just as mentally and just as physically developed to get out there and go compete with those guys.
Yeah, Brad Arnett's gonna like that story.
Yeah, we've had JJ's coach on a number of times.
Yep.
Yeah.
To add to that story about the individual that played for NC State and his turnaround from 600 to 114, what's really cool is everybody was just shocked how he did not get invited to the NFL Combine, right? And how's that slipped through the cracks. But when the NFL Combine's only inviting 350 total athletes on average to the Combine, it's tough to get into that, right? So there's a lot of talent out there. And our goal here at Velocity is to make the scouts or the player personnel or whoever it is at the NFL organization go back and look at their film, right? Through the work that we're able to do with their combine and their pro day training, we want to score high and make those scouts say, I missed something, right? And that's where we've had a lot of success with some of these guys that might not be high profile names that you haven't heard of or larger schools. We've helped them achieve success for this big interview and force these teams to go back and look at them and say, wow, this kid could play. I missed it, right? And now they got that shot to play at the next level. So that really, I'd much rather hang my hat on that kid that came out of Tennessee, Chattanooga, than that first-round draft pick. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to turn down a first-round draft pick by any means, but I'm going to hang my hat on that kid from Chattanooga that, had this weird 5-year stint in college, didn't find the field because he was lost within the mix or whatever it is, but has all the attributes and tools to be great, and we want to optimize those for him and get him the visibility that he needs. And we've been able to prove that over the last couple of years. Pretty proud of that for sure.
And I love that. That's those are some pretty incredible stories. That's just some really awesome stuff. Guys, this has been a great episode. This is some really, really good stuff. This is definitely worth another listen or two, guys. There's no question. We're gonna wrap it up here, but we're running short on time. But definitely want to do this again and dig in a little bit more. into some deeper training philosophies and things like that. But in the meantime, like where can people find you guys? Y'all on social media? How can they find you?
We are, absolutely. We're on all those little platforms, right? Anything from TikTok to Instagram to Twitter to Facebook, we're on them all. So most of you can follow us on Instagram at velocity_FB, or you can follow us on velocity_football on Twitter. Our website is www.the, as in velocity, theday.com. And then if you guys want to call us, 404-710-0485. We'd love to work with you guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. Well, man, this has been great. It was great to connect with you guys. I love what y'all are doing down there. Y'all put out some great information today, and this has been fun, man. I appreciate y'all taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
John, Chris, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for inviting us on. We'd love to do it again someday.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. We'd love to have you back on. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll have you and Brad Arnett on at the same time.
Yeah, there you go.
Let's go. All right, appreciate you guys.
Yeah, actually,
Guys, that's
yeah.
the show.
Thank you, guys.
All right, pay your dues, guys. Share the show.